Here we are, our next group discussion about survey results. This week, we are talking about marijuana. It's a controversial subject, and we've got a lot of survey responses to talk about. But I'm going to do the usual and share a couple things about Make Boise Better in general if you're not aware of them. Okay, so if you've never heard of Make Boise Better before, it is the easiest way to be a part of local solutions. We help you make your voice heard and make a difference through our weekly surveys, and then we share the results publicly and also our analysis. That makes it easier for leaders to understand what people think and to find and implement better solutions. So we are trying to kind of untangle some of the sticky issues that face our local communities and make it clear what a big group of people thinks about them. You get involved with this Do Your Part link, which just takes you to our simple sign-up form, and then you'll start getting emails with our survey invitations. Okay, now on to this week's topic, marijuana. To put it into context, or why we surveyed on this week, it's gotten to be something that's in the news constantly. A lot of our neighbors have legalized it recreationally, not only medically. It's legal in Oregon and Washington, and that's actually making it much more available in Boise. It's coming across the border and it's getting a lot more accessible. But Idaho doesn't appear to be getting close, on that trend. That Idaho politicians have traditionally been very anti-marijuana. So getting close to the election in November, we wanted to see what people think about this and kind of gauge reactions and ask some interesting questions. So here was our survey. Not going to go through all the questions, but this is available on that Medium page. We're going to go through the questions when we talk through the results. And then this is the form where you could sign up for the group discussion like Fred did. And this is something that we do on Tuesday. We send out the surveys on Monday. On Tuesday, we talk about what we've seen so far. And then the analysis comes out on Thursday for you to read. So now it's time. Here are our survey results. Make that bigger so it's easier to see. And Fred and I are going to kind of talk through it. So here we go. First question I asked was, how many times have you used marijuana in your life? The reason I wanted to ask this is to get a sense for because we ask about a lot of perceptions about marijuana and political opinions about marijuana further down. It seemed like really good context to me to know, are most of the people responding to this survey have never used marijuana before, so their opinions are held without experiencing it, or these are people that have used marijuana a couple times or a lot of times. So here are the results. Basically, the two biggest groups are the group that had said never used marijuana, about 35% roughly, out of our 59 responses, and the group that says they've used it more than 20 times in their life. So our biggest groups are people that have used it a lot of times and not at all, and there's kind of a smattering of people that have used it at varying degrees of a little bit in between. Fred, what's your take on this chart?
Looks like you've got your main representation from the two bookends of your continuum as far as non-users and possibly regular users.
Right. Though this that's why I asked the next question is how regularly do you use it? Because this is in your life. So this could be people that used to use it a lot but don't anymore.
Good point.
But this is a context. To me, this question is important for basically your general experience level with it. So when we ask things like, is it addictive or are there health benefits? Knowing whether or not people have experienced in some way or fashion in their life, regardless of how regular they use it now, I think is kind of relevant.
Well, and you might be able to add, as far as the demographics, the age profile of your community, as far as if most of your community is in their 20s, then they've at least probably used it once a year. Well, you're not going to use it when you're in elementary school, so it gives you an idea of frequency.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one use case is kind of the folks that used it in high school and college and then, got responsible, or so to say, and decided not to use it anymore after that. Maybe that wasn't something they felt comfortable doing with their family, or that was something that they didn't want to be a part of their lifestyle. But versus the people that, want this is something to sustain.
Do you know the age demographics of your survey responses?
Yes, but not from this survey. So in the analysis post, because we got over 50, this was the deal on analysis posts. If we didn't get more than 50 in a before analysis, then I wouldn't segment with responses from previous surveys. But because we're over 50, I'm planning to do that tomorrow. So we'll check it by I'll check it by age and a couple other things I want to look into, probably like political, liberal or conservative. Yeah, maybe, and potentially gender too. If we're seeing men smoking more than women or vice versa. So another thing that stood out to me here, and this is kind of something we see in the rest of the questions too, is very few people answered prefer not to answer. I put that there intentionally because I thought this being kind of a controversial topic and people feeling potentially sensitive about being open about their use of a illegal substance, I actually thought this was going to be higher. I thought there would be more people not comfortable answering. Thought maybe this would be up to like maybe 10 to 20%, but it's only 3%.
Well, but you also mentioned illegal, but that's illegal in Idaho, but doesn't mean they haven't lived in California or some other place for a while and got their numbers up.
That's true. Good point. Next question. How regularly do you use marijuana? So this is kind of answers the thought we had a second ago, which is when you look at this question, you might assume the people that have done it more than 20 times are regular users, just because that's such a big number. But when you look at how regularly they use marijuana today, though I didn't specify today, I think that's probably how it's interpreted. We've only got a few people. We've got a few people that say every day, a few people that say a few times a week, one person about once a week, a few people a few times a month, and you've got some people that are occasional users, less than once a month, and then you've got a big group that says they never use it anymore. Because this group that says never is bigger than the amount that said never in their life. So it's looking like, to me, my takeaway is there's a lot of people with experience with marijuana, but there aren't as many people that use it regularly in our respondents. It's a smaller group that use it frequently, a little bit bigger group that use it sometimes, and the biggest group is they don't use it anymore.
Well, to Boise being in the state of Idaho that hasn't passed it yet, too.
You think that's because of Idaho? Because of Idaho laws?
Yeah. Oh, that's what I'm possibility. I don't have any data.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. What would be interesting would be to see this question from 10 years ago. I'm guessing there's a lot more regular users now when all it takes is if you want to do it is to drive to Huntington, Oregon, to the nearest recreational dispensary. You can buy as much as you want and just drive it into Idaho, which is a kind of a low probability of getting caught. Let's see. Okay. Now the answer is, what's the primary reason you've used marijuana? Now we've still got the 21 that haven't used it, but we've got reasons for the other folks. So biggest one being to get high. Second one, relieve stress. And then pain and sleep are smaller ones. You have some like a fan going on in the background or something?
The furnace.
Oh.
Want me to switch it off?
No, it's okay. I don't hear it anymore actually.
Yeah, 'tis the season.
Yeah. Okay, so to me this is actually this, well, I went first last time. What's your take on this? Let's talk about the others while you're thinking. Partying recreationally for anxiety and sleep. Join the rest of the group. This is, in a party to relax. So I'd say these others are kind of split between to get hot, the to get high reason versus a probably stress.
That's what I was thinking as far as with regards to the users. It looks like you have maybe somewhat of a 50-50 split between recreational and medicinal from the perspective of body and mind.
That was my take too. So we've got about 25% that used it to get high, which is good. Kind of, we can say that's recreational use. Versus 15 for stress, 8 for sleep, and another 1.5, 2 for pain. So those add up to basically be about the same amount as to get high.
Mm-hmm.
These would be like medical applications.
Right.
Yeah, and if you include these others, you kind of end up with maybe you end up with about a third medical, a third recreational, and a third no use, never used.
I'm trying to remember. Is marijuana oil medically legal in Idaho?
Well, there's two chemicals or molecules, or there's two
Compounds.
Yeah, that's probably the word. There's two like types of marijuana, essentially extracts or whatever. There's THC, which gets you high, and there's CBD, which basically relieves your pain. And then there's many of them have hybrids, like combinations of them. So, was that your question?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So you can have oil for both of them. So you can use THC oil and get really high versus CBD oil and just kind of have your pain relieved.
Are there any legal compounds in Idaho?
As far as I know, there's not. And that's kind of why CBD oil is something that's kind of might be, some places it's considered independently of medical marijuana because CBD is relatively harmless, as far as I know, relatively harmless. It's just you can't get high. You can't really. I don't think it's not psychoactive. That's the term. So it's just kind of a reliever. So people are like, well, why? What's the objection to that? It's not the same thing as the psychoactive thing. So why not have it if your objections are it's irresponsible, it gets people high, they do stupid things, they get in trouble, I don't know. Yeah, let's move on. How many of your friends do you think use marijuana regularly as another context for kind of how exposed you are to marijuana, whether or not you use it yourself? How kind of, I think this is interesting in terms of the context of how prevalent it is in your life, even if you don't use it. So my take here is, despite having a lot of people that don't use it at all anymore, and then some people that use it frequently and more people that use it occasionally, this question is, how many of your friends use it regularly? And I guess regularly is a little up for interpretation, but to me, this is saying that a big number of people's friends are using marijuana regularly. So pretty much everybody has at least a few of them that do. A pretty small group says not any of them. And then, there's quite a big number of people that say half of them or most of them, or in some cases all of them.
Once again, that probably relates to what you find out about your community, the demographics of it.
Yeah. I mean, but let's assume, and I need to look into that for the analysis, but like, let's assume this is any demographic, like young people living in the North End. Maybe that's the demographic that's most likely to use marijuana. Let's just assume that. The fact that some of them would say all of my friends use it, or that 6 people would say most of my friends, and like, even if, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, to me, this, no matter what your demographic is, this is still kind of surprising. It's like everybody knows somebody, and a lot of people know a lot of people that use marijuana regularly.
Yeah, I would think that would be indicative of the cultural shift here in the Northwest with laws changing around us.
Yep. Yeah, and we're going to get to the stigma question soon. It might be next, but that I think is related. Asked, do you think marijuana has more or less stigma compared to 4 years ago? 4 years is kind of an arbitrary, fairly, it's fairly long away, and that it's not last year or 2 years ago.
But it's also relevant because I think that's about the time frame California legalized it.
Yeah, maybe. And medical's been legal for a lot longer than that. But I used 4 years also, just kind of like the last kind of cycle of presidential elections. But anyway, whether you use marijuana or not, or you have a lot of friends that use marijuana or not, you pretty much recognize that there's less stigma. The smallest group is people that say it's about the same, but nobody thinks it's more stigmatized. I think people think it's getting more normalized.
Yeah.
Got a take on that?
No, I would agree with you. I think looks like a pretty solid takeaway from that.
Yeah, that seems pretty clear. Okay, now this one question: do you think marijuana is addictive? Is kind of getting at one possible criticism of marijuana in terms of it being unhealthy, if it's addictive, maybe like cigarettes or something like that. And to me, well, I'll let you go first.
I'm not aware of any data that said it's addictive.
Yeah. Well, I think from what I'm aware of, it was considered not addictive. However, there's actually a pretty interesting article recently, Atlantic Marijuana Addiction. This article made a really big splash and talked about a bunch of people that are like the rate that people are using marijuana every day or multiple times a day has like skyrocketed. It used to be a really small number, but now it's like a really big number. Can't quote it exactly, but I think they said something to the effect of okay, here we go. The share of cannabis users who consume it daily or near daily has jumped nearly 50%. So basically it's getting whether or not it's chemically addictive on its own, or it's just some people are like getting, I don't know, addicted to the lifestyle or what. There's like a rapid increase of people using it every day, which is kind of concerning. And this article like goes into kind of how that's been harmful to some people.
Well, I think you hit on there's different kind of addictions as far as there can be an addiction related to the compound. There can be an addiction related to the activity. If you're smoking or using a vape pipe, just the addiction of doing something orally or periodically with your friends. So it's a get-together kind of addiction. So there's different kinds of addictions other than chemical.
Yeah, like it could be not like nicotine, but the act of using marijuana maybe releases like serotonin or whatever, like brain chemicals, just from like something pleasurable that your body experiences. Your brain releases like a happy chemical that I think you can get addicted to even just that. Like it will reinforce brain pathways, and then some like you feel more urges to do that. So it's a good point.
And another example or idea is people that drink a glass of red wine at dinner every night because they think it's going to help their heart doesn't mean they're addicted to red wine.
True. But maybe they are.
Could be case by case.
Yeah. Anyway, our folks said biggest groups were somewhat addictive or not so addictive. Got a small minority that says extremely addictive, and a small group says very addictive, and a small group says not at all addictive. So this is like I would summarize this, the consensus and generally as, or not consensus, but
you've got a bell curve there.
Yeah, the major opinion is somewhere between somewhat addictive and not so addictive. So like maybe a little bit, but not much, is what I would interpret that as.
Well, plus when you talked about the two different main kinds of marijuana compounds, and then you talked about derivatives off of those. So I don't know how broad these derivatives get with additional additives or whatever that changes the data.
Yeah, sure. Well, and there's tons of different strains of marijuana, and maybe some are more addictive than others, just by a factor of that unique characteristics of a specific like lineage of plant, even not within a marijuana category,
or if it's even getting blended with something else.
Yeah.
Because I was just thinking after the survey, I couldn't remember if nicotine is actually in the tobacco leaves organically or if nicotine
add it.
if nicotine's added to the cigarette, which makes it addictive.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah,
that would be really
that's what I was thinking about here, whether it's analogous.
Yeah. Do you think marijuana offers legitimate health benefits? What do you think?
Well, I think that goes along with, I think one of the reasons that the stigma has gone down significantly is because it appears there's quite a quantity of data regarding the health benefits.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And to me, this is another one. It's like the stigma question. There's pretty much seems to be a lot of agreement across our respondents on that one. And this one, I think, is the same. It's like, yeah, wow, okay.
And to give you an example, another thing that is kind of adjacent to this topic is the opioid addiction crisis. And the example where the NFL is trying to jump on marijuana because those guys are getting beat up so much every week and have so much pain and can get addicted so easy to the opioids. If they could use marijuana, assuming it's not addictive or far less, it could be a big benefit for them.
True. And have a lot less health consequences.
Yeah.
Less severe. Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much everybody agrees it offers health benefits. I didn't ask this question, but I think that the other side of this is maybe everybody agrees it has health benefits. Maybe simultaneously, a lot of people would agree that it has some health concerns, like memory or brain development in children, things like that. Like you might not be at your cognitive best when using marijuana regularly, though it might really help you with pain and anxiety. But then again, maybe you're not at your cognitive best using a lot of alternatives. So,
or if you're in pain.
Well, yeah, that certainly is true. Or if you can't sleep.
Yeah.
All right. Do you approve of legalizing marijuana in Idaho? So we compared CBD oil, which is the one that's just pretty much pain. It's not psychoactive. It doesn't get you high. Versus basically all types of marijuana, but you have to get a physician's recommendation for it for medical. Versus full-on recreational. Anybody can get it for whatever purposes you want. Typically, only if you're of age, which I think is 18 or 21, depending on the state. I'm not actually sure. But these are weighted averages. So the longer the bar, the more support for legalizing it, or the more approval for legalizing it. And looks to me like CBD oil and medical marijuana are about the same in terms of support. CBD oil looks like it's got the edge just barely. See, they got 43 votes for strongly approve. Nobody strongly disapproved of it. And only 4 people disapproved in general, which is kind of like what it looks like for medical marijuana, that you've got 1 strongly approved, an extra disapprove. And the difference being basically the going from medical to recreational. Though still the biggest group is those that strongly approve, is strongly approved people, and there's a lot of approves as well. There's more people that are kind of on the fence. Definitely more that are strongly opposed. So actually what stands out to me is that I would have thought that there would be more strongly disapproves, or maybe most of the people that haven't ever used marijuana maybe that number would be more closely aligned with strongly disapproved on legalizing it. Just because maybe if you've never tried it, maybe you have a negative perception of it and it's not good, so maybe you wouldn't want it to be legal. But we had 21 people that said they'd never used it, and we only had 8 strongly disapprove and 10, that disapproved or strongly disapproved. So to me, that's kind of surprising. Like you've got a lot of people that support legalization even if they've never tried it. What about you?
Yeah, your table definitely leans that way. That it's similar to the stigma data, where the weight of the data is leaning towards the pro aspect.
Yeah, pretty clearly. I kind of thought, and maybe not everybody's aware of what CBD oil is, but I kind of thought there would be kind of more of a gradual decline here. Like almost everybody would support CBD oil, and then less people would support recreational, and medical would be somewhere in between. But it looks like medical is about right where CBD is. So that's interesting too.
Well, and I didn't know as much about the oil as you informed me on. I was just thinking in terms of the oil form versus the smoking form, that the oil form might be more healthy as far as not getting the smoke lungs.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that probably, unless you're somewhat familiar with marijuana in general, you might not know what CBD oil really is. So, it's a good point. All right, and then we're into comments, which I'm not going to touch on now. Those will be highlighted in the analysis on Thursday.
Well, let's go back to that previous one for just a little bit. So, I was thinking along the lines of people that are kind of organic oriented or clean air oriented, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That I was thinking people that don't mind smoke could smoke marijuana. People that want to be a little healthier might eat it in their food, and then they really clean air organic people might favor the oil. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Oh, you're talking about this still?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought you saw a comment that struck you.
No.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because there's a lot of ways to use marijuana. Edibles, smoking, different ways to smoke, different ways to purify the smoke, vaping, lotion even. Like if you've got joint pain, you can get marijuana lotion to soothe your elbow or your carpal tunnel or something like that. There was actually a article in the Idaho Press or the Statesman recently talking about how that's a big thing for assisted living in facilities. I think in Oregon and Washington, the dispensaries will send a shuttle to the assisted living locations and bring some of these elderly folks that have health challenges with pain. What the example that one lady had was carpal tunnel, and she didn't like all the side effects of her prescription drugs. So she decided to explore marijuana, though she'd never used it before and didn't really have a desire to for any of the recreation, but it was, just the best medicine she could have essentially for what she wanted.
That could help the pro athletes then too.
Yep, totally. Okay, let's take a step back and think about, is anything missing from this discussion that would have been important to ask about or to clarify? Is anything missing, or are there any takeaways?
Well, one of the things I think about that might have been somewhat missing as far as if it was legalized, I would want it legalized within the same framework as cigarettes and alcohol, as far as like you mentioned, an age limit. And then I think I've read in the media where they're struggling with how to determine if somebody's DUI with marijuana, and the law enforcement's trying to figure that out. But I'd also be concerned about a safe supply, because right now when you get your medications, you know your prescription bottles have the sealed top, so you know nobody meddled with it. But like when I was growing up in the 50s, you didn't have those sealed tops. It wasn't until somebody tampered with some aspirin and killed some people that all that started. So I'd be interested in a framework of safe supply and safe use with regard to age and driving, that kind of thing.
Yep. You raise a good point that by keeping it illegal, you may be hurting more people than you're helping if people are already determined to get marijuana, whether it's for recreation or for medical purposes, and they're not able to drive to a dispensary to get the regulated quality stuff that they can trust, and they buy it from some a sketchy guy in town. They don't know what's in it. They don't know where it came from, or there's any issues with it, and that's risky and makes you uncomfortable, and is going to counteract your anxiety minimizing.
Well, and I was also thinking with regards to, I guess we weren't entirely clear about whether marijuana is addictive, but one of the things that I was thinking about when I took the survey was, I've also heard people say, at least maybe it's an old stigma, but I've heard people have the opinion that they think marijuana is a gateway drug to stronger things.
Yep.
And I was thinking maybe that's not related to addiction as much as when it's illegal and people start using marijuana and they feel comfortable doing something illegal, then they may be more prone. Well, I'm going to try something else. They're what's the word I'm looking for? They're more courageous to try something that may be a little more illegal once they've crossed that boundary.
Risk tolerant, something like that.
Right.
Well, and also if you're buying it from the neighborhood drug dealer, because that's how you have to get it when it's illegal, that's the same guy that has all the other stuff, maybe.
Good point.
Or it's more likely to be the guy that has the other stuff, versus if it's legal, dispensaries just have that.
Good point.
They don't have other stuff.
Yeah. So you're with it illegal, you like you say, you have more exposure to the salesperson prowess of who you're getting it from with whatever else they're carrying.
Right. Do you think that the Idaho legislature would be surprised by these results?
Well, one of the things come to mind is a lot of times I have to catch my thought processes because I think of Boise, I think of all of Idaho being Boise. But
Boise, that's what they call the state of Ada.
Yeah, it's like Boise. They say Boise is the blue dot on the red state, and you've got urban and you've got rural. So I'm not in touch with the whole state very well to answer that.
Yeah.
Boise City Council might be a different answer compared to the Idaho legislature.
True. Yeah, it's hard to say, and probably if I would make assumptions, I'm guessing Boiseans are more approving of legalizing it than maybe more rural areas. But I actually kind of think legislators might be like, this might point and obviously this isn't probably a representative sample of all Boiseans either. This is like, the 59 people that responded to our survey, signed up for Make Boise Better and took the survey. But still, it's,
But to answer
there's
your
60
question another
people
way,
that are this approving, that aren't, all just sourced from a legalized Idaho movement. Maybe it's worth paying attention to.
well, and what was your original question? Whether the Idaho legislature would be interested in it?
Would be surprised.
Would be surprised?
I think they would be.
So no, I don't think they'd be surprised with it being Boise based.
I'm guessing that they think that marijuana is more divisive in Boise than what this found. And I think there's enough people in here that they might want to write it off because it's not a big sample and it's not representative. But I don't know, maybe they should think about it because it's 60 people, and it's not 60 people that are all the same, and that are all already, weed users. Yeah, we know that half of them aren't marijuana users.
Well, my perspective is I'm fairly pro legislature, where I think my perception is all or most of the legislatures are interested in any data or in any analysis put together from data in a professional way. That I think they like to gather up any information they can get. It helps them with their job.
Oh, I'm not saying that as much as I think that maybe they'd just be surprised how supportive of marijuana legalization this group is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to knock the legislature.
Oh, no, but I guess what I'm saying is I think they would be interested in it if you wanted to somehow channel it that way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're over our time. Thanks for your thoughts, Fred, and your discussion points.
What does Wookie think?
Wookie didn't want to come inside for the video call today.
Oh, great. He's got a higher priority, the squirrels or something?
He deliberately disobeyed me.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Talk to you later. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.